The stars above Titan Prime were calm, but inside the pilot's deck, Rio's hands were shaking. He had never flown in a real battle before. Only simulators, only practice drills. But now he sat inside the cockpit of a brand new F6F Hellcat X, the strongest human-made fighter in space. Around him, other pilots were getting ready too. There was no more time for training. The Zanari were coming. Titan Prime was a small human colony on the edge of explored space. It had mines full of rare minerals and strong shield towers, but not much protection from space attacks. That's why the military had sent a group of new pilots and the first squadron of Hellcat X fighters to defend it. Rio looked to his left. His squad leader, a calm man named Bren, gave him a nod through the cockpit glass. Rio nodded back, trying to hide his fear. "All ships, prepare for launch," the radio said. Rio took a deep breath. He gripped the controls and activated the engines. The Hellcat X rumbled to life, and within seconds, he blasted into space. The sky above Titan Prime was beautiful. Stars sparkled in the distance, and the planet's rings glowed with color. But Rio didn't have time to admire it. The radar flashed red. "They're here," Bren said over comms. "Zanari fighters incoming. All ships, get ready." Rio squinted through his screen. The Zanari G-Class Zeros were fast and smooth, like flying silver arrows. Everyone feared them. Their weapons were sharp, and their ships could turn faster than any human fighter. But the Hellcat X was different. Rio remembered what the engineers had said. "It's not about speed, it's about strength. The Hellcat can take a hit, and it can give one back. Trust your ship." The Zanari didn't wait. They flew straight toward the human fighters in groups of 3. Green lasers flashed. 2 Hellcats exploded near Rio before he could even fire. "Stay calm," Bren shouted. "Form a wall. Let them come to us." Rio followed the order. He pulled his Hellcat behind Bren's and aimed his weapons. A Zanari fighter flew by, turning hard toward him. "Too fast," Rio muttered. He spun his ship, but the Zero was already behind him. His ship shook with a blast. Alarms flashed red. Another shot like that, and he would be done. Suddenly, a blast of blue fire hit the Zero, breaking its wing. Bren's voice came through. "I got your back. Now breathe and shoot." Rio didn't answer. He just turned and locked onto another Zero. This one flew head-on. It fired. Rio dodged and returned fire. The Hellcat's plasma bolts struck true. Alien ship burst into light. "One down," Rio said quietly. The battle raged for 20 minutes. Human fighters kept their formation, while the Zeros swarmed like wasps. Rio flew beside Bren and 2 others. They formed a cross pattern, covering each other. Rio shot down another Zero that tried to flank them, but then everything changed. A wave of 10 Zeros came from behind a moon fragment. They rushed the Hellcats, and this time, they brought heavy fire. One of Rio's teammates screamed over the comm, then went silent as his ship broke apart. "We're losing too many," Bren said. "Pull back to the Titan shield range." Rio didn't like running, but he followed the order. The Hellcats turned and flew toward the planet. The Zeros followed, but that's when the humans turned the fight around. The Hellcat X had a special trick: rear plasma guns. As they flew back, Rio pressed the rear fire button. Blue plasma fired from the back of his ship, catching the chasing Zero by surprise. It exploded in flame. The other pilots did the same. 5 Zeros fell in moments. Inside his cockpit, Rio smiled. For the first time, as they entered the outer shield ring of Titan Prime, the colony's ground defense cannons joined the fight. Heavy red lasers shot upward, picking off more Zeros. With fewer enemy ships and better cover, the Hellcats gained the upper hand. Rio fired again, hitting another Zero in the wing. The enemy ship spun out and crashed into space debris. "Confirmed kill," Bren shouted. Rio checked his screen. Only 6 Zeros remained. The Hellcats had 11 fighters still flying. Rio looked at the numbers. The humans were winning. Group them and finish it, Bren ordered. The Hellcats spread out, forcing the last zeros into open space. One by one, the alien ships were destroyed. The final explosion lit up the sky. Silence returned to space. Rio sat in his cockpit, heart pounding. His hands were still shaking, but he was alive. "Report in," Bren said. Each pilot responded. Of the original 16 Hellcats, 11 had survived. Of the 30 Zanari Zeros, none escaped. That was almost a 3-to-1 kill ratio. The best result humans had ever seen. "Not bad for your first battle," Bren said to Rio. Rio didn't answer. He just looked at the stars. The Hellcat X had done what no other fighter could. It had faced the fearsome zeros and won, and this was only the beginning. The stars above Beacon 9 were lonely. Far from the central space routes and human colonies. Beacon 9 was a small station, floating near a broken asteroid field. Dust, ice, and old debris drifted around it. Most pilots called it the edge of nothing. But now Beacon 9 had new life. After the battle at Titan Prime, Command decided to send a few skilled Hellcat X pilots to Beacon 9. They needed a place to test new tactics without enemy eyes. The enemy didn't come here often. It was quiet. That made it perfect. Rio was one of the pilots sent to the outpost. His victory at Titan Prime had earned attention. He had taken down 3 zeros and survived. Now he was no longer a rookie. Still, when Rio stepped off the shuttle at Beacon 9, he felt small again. The station was old. Its metal walls were scratched and faded. Lights flickered in the hallway. There were only 6 pilots here. The others had either been transferred or retired. And no one smiled. "Welcome to the end of space," a voice said behind him. Rio turned and saw a woman in a dark flight suit. She looked older, maybe in her late 30s, with short hair and calm eyes. "I'm Mira," she said. "Squad leader here." "You're the Titan kid, right?" Rio nodded. "Yes, I'm Rio." "Good. Let's see if you last longer than the last hero." They sent. Rio's new bunk was small. The room had only a bed, a desk, and a metal locker. He unpacked his flight suit and a photo of his younger brother, who still lived on Earth. He taped it on the wall. After a short rest, he reported to the hangar. There, the Hellcat X fighters stood in rows. Their thick armor, heavy wings, and blue glow made them look like sleeping beasts. Rio felt proud seeing his name on the side of one. Mira was already waiting. 2 other pilots, Torin and Leah, joined them. Mira pointed at a map on the screen. "Tomorrow we run patrol into the Grave Belt," Rio blinked. "Isn't that a junk zone? Old shipwrecks?" "Yes," Mira said. "And sometimes Zanari scouts. Command thinks they're hiding something out there. Why not send a full fleet?" Torin asked. Mira looked serious. "Because they're watching the fleets, but not us. We're just ghosts in the dark." The next day, 3 Hellcat X ships launched from Beacon 9 and entered the Grave Belt. It was a strange place. The remains of broken satellites, destroyed. Cargo ships and rusted alien wrecks floated like frozen bones. It felt haunted. Rio followed Mira's lead. They moved slowly, using low energy to stay hidden. "Remember," Mira said, "Zeros love open space, but here their speed means nothing." As they moved deeper, Rio saw strange flashes on his scanner. "Motion," he said. "I see it too," Mira replied. "Quiet now." Suddenly, 3 zeros shot from behind a giant fuel tank. Their silver wings shined, even in the dark. "They saw us," Leah shouted. "Form up." Mira commanded. Rio pulled into formation. The fight began fast. The zeros moved like lightning, darting between wrecks. But this time, Rio wasn't afraid. He locked onto one, waited, then fired. The zero swerved but hit a metal beam floating nearby. Rio fired again. The blast hit the engine. The ship exploded, one down. He shouted. Mira circled and fired another Zero. It dodged, but Leah came from behind and finished the job. Only one remained. It tried to run, but Torin looped around and clipped its wing. Don't let it escape, Mira said. Rio and Mira chased the final Zero through the wreckage. It was fast, but the grave belt worked against it. The Zero crashed into a cargo container. Rio fired one last shot. Boom. After the battle, the team hovered in place. The grave belt was quiet again. 3 enemy ships, Mira said. 0 losses. That's what I like to see, Rio smiled. This mission was different. It wasn't about wild dogfights or lucky hits. It was about planning, teamwork, and using the Hellcat's strength wisely. Back at the station, Command received their report. The data showed something important. In tight spaces, the Hellcat X had a huge advantage. Zeros couldn't use their speed where they couldn't turn. And the Hellcat's armor let it take hits and keep flying. This mission, though small, was a turning point. Later that night, Rio sat in the mess hall with a warm cup of tea. Mira joined him, quiet at first. You did well today, she said. Thanks, Rio replied. You remind me of my old wingmate, Mira added. He was fast, fearless, too fearless. What happened to him? Mira looked down, tried to outturn a Zero in open space. That's not how you win, Rio nodded. I think I'm starting to understand. The Hellcat's not about speed. No, Mira said. It's about control, patience, power. You use the ship like a hammer. Let the enemy come to you. Rio thought about that. It made sense now. The Hellcat wasn't just a machine. It was a different way of thinking. At night, as he lay in his bunk, Rio stared at the photo of his brother. He remembered why he fought, not just to win, but to protect. The stars outside the window blinked softly. Beacon 9 floated silently at the edge of space, far from the big battles and famous stations. But something important was happening here. Something quiet. Something powerful. The Hellcat X was learning how to win, and soon the whole galaxy would know. The battle near Moonbase Vigo was over, but its memory lived on. Rio stood on the viewing deck of Beacon 9, watching Earth slowly rise over the curve of the moon. Stars blinked peacefully in the background, as if nothing had happened. But Rio knew better. The sky remembered everything. The F6F Hellcat X was no longer just a fighter. It had become a symbol. Across every human colony, people spoke of the victory. Old pilots came out of retirement. New cadets signed up in thousands. Posters of Hellcats covered the walls of training centers. Children pointed at the sky and said, I want to fly that. But for Rio and the others, the memory was heavier than the glory. Victory had a cost. Inside the war room, Mira stood in front of a large screen showing movement in deep space. The Zanari have pulled back from the inner zone, an officer explained. They lost too many Zeros. Their high command is silent. That's not a good sign, Mira said. Silence means planning. She looked over at Rio, who had just entered. The fight isn't over, she told him. Rio nodded. Then neither are we. Over the next few days, engineers worked non-stop on upgrading the Hellcat X fleet. They improved the thrusters, added more advanced targeting systems, and strengthened the wing armor. The goal was simple: make the best fighter in history even better. Meanwhile, Beacon 9 became a hero's station. News teams visited. Reporters asked questions. But the pilots stayed humble. One young reporter asked Rio, how did you defeat so many Zeros with no losses? Rio paused before answering. Because we trusted each other. And because the Hellcat was made to protect, not just to fight. Elsewhere, the Zanari Empire met in secret. Their leaders could not believe the numbers. 500 Z-Class Zeros gone. Their top pilots defeated. The human Hellcats had shattered their pride. The Zanari warlord, LastDeck, stood in the middle of the black chamber. "Humans are not supposed to be this strong," he growled. An advisor replied. "They adapt, they learn fast, and they fight together." LastDeck clenched his fists. "Then we change the game." He ordered a new project to begin something darker, faster, and more dangerous than anything the Zanari had used before. Back at Beacon 9, the pilots were given a short break. It was the first time in weeks they could rest. Rio walked through the garden dome, where flowers from Earth grew in glass containers. It was quiet, peaceful. Mira joined him, carrying 2 cups of warm synth tea. "You know," she said, "this place feels like home now." Rio nodded. "It is. For all of us." He looked up at the dome's clear ceiling, where tiny stars flickered in the distance. "The sky remembers," he said softly. Mira tilted her head. "Remembers what?" Rio smiled. "Everything we fight for." 2 days later, an urgent message came in. A human science ship, Hopewind, had vanished while studying signals in the dark stretch, an area of space between systems where old satellites never worked well. It had sent one final image before disappearing. The image showed a new type of Zanari ship, sleek, black, and surrounded by strange energy. Mira looked at the screen. "That's not a zero." "No," Darrow replied. "It's something else." The ship was called the Shadowlance, fast as a thought, invisible to most sensors, and carrying plasma weapons never seen before. If the zeros were the sword, this was the spear. Command gave orders quickly. A scout team of Hellcats was to be sent into the dark stretch to locate and, if possible, disable the Shadowlance. Mira, Rio, Juno, and 2 others volunteered. Their mission: find the truth, protect the colonies. The Hellcats launched in silence, their engines glowing gently in the dark. The dark stretch was cold and full of floating debris from forgotten wars. Broken drones, ancient wrecks, and drifting satellites moved like ghosts in space. Rio kept his eyes on the scanner. Still nothing, no signal, no heat. Then Juno spoke sharply. "Wait, left side, movement." The Shadowlance appeared suddenly. It didn't come out of warp, it phased in. One moment it wasn't there, the next moment it was. "Engage." Mira ordered. The fight was nothing like before. The Shadowlance moved like a shadow in water, fast, quiet, slippery. Its weapons curved through space, bending around metal. One of the Hellcats was hit and nearly torn apart. The pilot ejected safely. But the damage was clear. This was not a regular enemy. Rio tried to flank it, but the lance twisted mid-space and vanished again. "It's using some kind of cloaking," Juno shouted. Mira stayed calm. "Then we fight with light." She launched a series of flare-mine small orbs that glowed bright and disrupted. Shadow tech. The lance appeared again, partly visible, like a ghost in the fog. Rio fired. His plasma shot hit the lance's side. A small explosion followed. Juno hit it again from the top. The lance spun, trying to escape, but Mira was ready. She fired the final shot. The Shadowlance burst into pieces, its wreckage floating in silence. Hellcats returned to Beacon 9 with the broken parts of the enemy ship. Engineers and scientists would study it. But one thing was clear: the Zanari were not giving up. They had made a new weapon. Mira stood before the fleet. "This victory proves one thing," she said. "They will keep changing, but so will we." The pilots nodded. Rio added, "We are not just pilots, we are protectors. As long as we fly, Earth is safe." In the days that followed, the Hellcat was upgraded again: stronger shields, faster engines, better scanners. But even with all the new tech, Rio knew the real power came from something else. The heart of every pilot. Humanity had faced the best of the Zanari Empire and survived. The 19-to-1 kill ratio became a badge of courage, and when people looked to the sky, they no longer feared the dark. They whispered one word, full of hope and fire: Hellcat. The war room on Beacon 9 was brighter than usual. Screens showed live data, kill counts, and flight patterns. Charts scrolled fast: red for Zanari, blue for humans. In the middle of it all, Mira stood with her arms crossed. Rio and Torin sat beside her, both still in their flight suits. A general's voice echoed through the comm. 3 Hellcats destroyed, 5 Zeros with 0 losses? He asked. Yes, sir, Mira replied. In the grave belt, they couldn't outfly us in that space. There was a long pause. Then the general said slowly, that gives your squad a kill ratio of 5-0. That's impressive. Rio looked at the screen. For the first time, he saw the numbers command was tracking. Across all missions using Hellcat X fighters, the kill ratio was climbing. 12-1, 14-1. Now Beacon 9 had pushed it to 19-1. Rio and Torin left the room and walked through the long corridor. Back to the pilot wing. I used to think numbers were just numbers, Torin said. What do you mean? Rio asked. I mean, 1 kill, 2 kills doesn't change the war, right? But this is different. It's proof. Rio nodded. The Hellcat works, even against zeros. The door opened as Mira entered. They're sending new orders tomorrow, she said. Another mission. But this one's not from Beacon Command. Rio raised his eyebrows. From who then? Earth High Command, she said. And they're sending someone else with it. The next morning, a small shuttle docked at Beacon 9. A tall, thin man stepped out. He looked different. Pale skin, sharp eyes, and 4 silver rings on his sleeves. But it wasn't just his uniform that made everyone stare. He wasn't human. I am Daro, he said in a calm voice. Former engineer of the Zanari fleet. Silence filled the hangar. Rio looked at Myra confused. He's Zanari? Defector, Mira said quietly. He contacted Earth Command with information. They brought him here. I didn't ask why. Daro stepped forward. I came because I've seen what the Hellcat X can do. I helped design the first Glee-class fighters. I also know their weaknesses. Rio folded his arms. And now you're helping us? Daro looked him in the eye. I'm helping end the war. That is all. Inside the meeting room, Daro stood before a screen showing the shape of the Z-Class Zero. He pointed at its narrow body. The Zero is built for speed and fast kills, but its armor is thin. And its engine overheats if it moves too sharply for too long. He turned to the Hellcat's design. The Hellcat is heavy, strong, and slow. But it can take damage and fire twice the payload. In open space, the Zero wins. But in close fields like the grave belt, the Hellcat is the hammer. Mira looked impressed. Rio leaned closer to the screen. But why build something so fragile? Torin asked. Daro's voice lowered. Because the Zanari don't believe in surviving long. They believe in fear. Their ships were built to scare enemies, not to last, Rio frowned. Well, they're not scaring us anymore. Command gave Beacon 9 a new mission. Find out why so many Zeros were hiding in the grave belt, and destroy any enemy supply lines nearby. Rio, Mira, Torin, and 2 new pilots, Juno and Brennick, were sent in 5 Hellcat X fighters. Daro would guide them from Beacon 9, using what he knew about Zanari patterns. Inside the cockpit, Rio checked his systems. All green, he said. Stick to the plan, Mira's voice said through the comm. We use the cover of wrecks, move slow, and hit fast. Daro says they store supply pods in broken Zanari ships. They launched. The 5 Hellcats moved into Sector 9 of the grave belt. The field was tighter here. Large pieces of destroyed cruisers floated close together. It was like flying through a maze. Rio spotted something. They're between those metal plates. That's a pod. Juno flew closer and scanned. Zanari supply crate, still active. Before they could pull it in, a warning flashed on every screen. Incoming. Torin shouted. 10 Zeros dropped from behind a destroyed command ship. They were fast moving together like a pack. Ambush. Mira said, "Tighten up. Defend the crate." The battle started fast. Zeros fired bright green beams, spinning through the metal jungle. The Hellcats returned fire, but they stayed near the wrecks for cover. Rio moved up and over a broken satellite. A Zero followed but hit the corner of a floating panel. It broke in half and exploded. "Use the field," Darrow said from the station. "They can't stop like you can." Rio rolled to the left, let a Zero overshoot, then fired. The enemy spun into a wall of junk and vanished in flame. Juno and Torin double-teamed 2 more. One fired from below while the other struck from above. Clean kills. Soon 6 Zeros were gone. Only 4 remained, but they were smarter, staying high above the field. "They want us to come up," Mira said. "Don't. Let's wait." The Hellcats waited. Seconds passed. Then 1 Zero made a move flying down to snipe at Juno. But Brennick was waiting. One blast from his plasma cannon, and the Zero was gone. The last 3 Zeros tried to escape. "Not this time," Mira said. "Rio." And Mira chased one. It flew into open space, but its engine glowed red. Overheating. Darrow was right. Rio said. He locked on and fired. Boom. When they returned to Beacon 9, the room cheered. All 5 Hellcats came back. 10 Zeros were gone. The new kill count. 29 to 1. That was no longer a battle record. That was a pattern. Command sent a message. Across the fleet, the Hellcat X is our future. Adapt all training to match Beacon 9's methods. Rio sat in the hangar, wiping his helmet. Mira walked by and smiled. "Told you. Numbers don't lie." He looked at the latest report. His hand touched the screen. The kill ratio read 19 to 1, and it was only going up. The grave belt was darker than usual. Chunks of old ships, metal beams, broken stations, and frozen bodies drifted slowly through the empty zone. Long ago, it was the site of a huge battle between humans and the Zanari. Now it was a graveyard. In space. But today, it was more than that. Mira stood in the command room of Beacon 9, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Command has ordered a deep scan of Sector 6, she said. "Zanari ships have been disappearing there." Rio leaned forward. "You think they're hiding something?" "I don't think." "I know," she said. Rio, Mira, and Torin prepared their Hellcat X fighters. Each fighter was loaded with extra fuel, stealth plates, and newly upgraded scanners. The mission was to scan the area and return without being seen. But in space, nothing goes as planned. The 3 Hellcats flew silently into the grave belt. Their lights were dimmed, engines set to low power. Every sensor was active, searching for movement, heat, or signals. Rio kept his eyes on the radar. "Lots of junk here." "Stay sharp," Mira said. "If something moves, tell me first." "Shoot later." They moved past the wreckage of an old freighter. Its side was torn open, like it had been bitten. Frozen cables floated like vines. Rio felt cold inside. Suddenly, Torin's voice crackled. "I've got something low signal, 12 degrees left." They turned. A strange pulse came from a broken Zanari cruiser. "It's not dead," Mira said. Rio checked his screen. "It's sending short-range pings, but not to us." "Back away slowly," Mira ordered. Too late. 5 silver Zeros burst out from behind the wreck. They came in fast and silent, weapons glowing green. "Break formation," Mira shouted. Rio pulled hard. Left as lasers flew past him. The Zeros split up, circling them like hunters. "Don't run," Mira said. "Stay close. Use the wrecks for cover." The fight began. A Zero flew toward Rio from above. He dived under a spinning fuel tank, turned fast, and fired a short burst. His shots hit the enemy's wing. The Zero spun and crashed into a broken ship frame. One down. Torin was in trouble. Two Zeros were chasing him through tight spaces. "I can't shake them," he shouted. "I'm coming," Rio replied. Rio looped around and fired at the lead Zero. It turned toward him, firing back. Rio took a hit on the side, but the Hellcat's armor held strong. He pushed his engines and slammed into a narrow corridor of broken panels. The Zero followed. That was a mistake. Rio fired just as the Zero tried to turn. It clipped a beam and exploded. The blast knocked Rio's ship sideways, but he recovered. Mira had her own battle. She flew close to a spinning satellite, using it as a shield. A Zero circled, trying to get behind her. "Come on, just a little closer," she whispered as the Zero moved in. Mira reversed thrust and spun. The heavy Hellcat stopped suddenly, and the enemy overshot her. She fired. Direct hit. The enemy ship exploded in silence. Now only two Zeros remained. Torin and Rio teamed up to chase one through the wrecks. The pilot was fast, cutting through tight paths and ducking under broken metal. But the Hellcat's targeting system had been upgraded. "Locking on," Rio said. "Firing now." A sharp burst of plasma hit the Zero's back. Fire lit the grave belt. 4 down. The final Zero tried to flee. It turned sharply, climbing out of the wreck zone. Mira wasn't letting it go. "I'm on it," she said. She fired a short pulse. The Zero took damage but kept flying. "Rio, climb with me." Torin, block the exit. "Copy," Rio replied. The 3 Hellcats moved together. The Zero reached the edge of the field, but Torin was waiting. He fired a beam that clipped the enemy's wing. It spun out of control. "Finish it," Mira ordered. Rio fired the last shot. The Zero vanished into fire and smoke. The silence returned. The grave belt drifted as it always did. But now 5 Zanari ships were gone. Rio looked at the data. 3 of us. 5 of them. No losses. "That's a 5-to-0 kill ratio," Mira said calmly. Beacon 9's first clean win. They returned to base, silent and tired, but proud. At the debriefing, the data shocked of a higher command. The Hellcat X didn't just survive, it dominated. Even in the tight, dangerous grave belt, the slow and strong fighters had the edge. Zanari Zeros were fast, yes, but fast didn't help in a maze. Strength, control, and teamwork had won the day. Later that night, Rio sat alone in the hangar. His Hellcat was being refueled, its wings marked with fresh scars. He touched the side of the ship and whispered, "Good job, old friend." Mira walked in quietly. "You flew well today." "Thanks. I couldn't have done it alone." "No one wins alone," Mira said. "Remember that." She handed him a small metal pin. "First kill badge. You earned it. Put it on your suit." Rio smiled and took it. He felt a little more like a real pilot now, out in space. The wreck of the old Zanari cruiser still floated. Its last signal had gone silent, but deep inside, a black box flickered, once then died. Whatever secret it held would remain hidden for now, but the message was clear. The Hellcat had drawn first blood in the grave belt, and the Zanari were not ready for what came next. The stars near Earth's moon looked peaceful, but war was coming. Beacon 9's latest report had reached every corner of the human fleet. News spread fast. The F6F Hellcat X had destroyed 23 Zanari Zeros in one battle without losing a single fighter. The kill ratio had now reached 19-to-1. Pilots across the colonies whispered the same words. The Hellcat is a legend. But not everyone was celebrating. In deep space, the Zanari Empire prepared their next move. The defeat at Serpent Corridor had angered their leaders. They wanted revenge. A large Zanari fleet, over 500 Z-class Zeros, was moving toward Earth's outer defenses. Their target, Moonbase Vega, one of the main shield stations guarding the planet. Inside the command room of Beacon 9, the mood was heavy. Rio stood beside Mira and the other pilots as a serious-looking admiral appeared on the screen. This is no longer a small battle, the Admiral said. This is their biggest attack in years. They want to break us at the heart. If Vega falls, Earth will be open. Rio asked, how many fighters are we sending? All of them, the Admiral replied. Every fleet near Earth is launching. And we want Beacon 9's Hellcats to lead the first wave. Mira nodded, we'll be ready. The next morning, Beacon 9's 7 Hellcats flew toward Earth's moon. On the way, they joined other squadrons fighters from Mars, Saturn's ring colonies, and Titan Prime. Together, more than 70 human fighters gathered in formation. But still, they were outnumbered. 500 zeros, Juno said quietly. That's not a battle. That's a storm. Mira answered calmly. Then we fly through the storm. Rio looked around. Pilots were nervous, but their eyes lit up every time they saw the Hellcat X-fighters. It was like flying with giants, he smiled to himself. The legend was real now, when the Zanari fleet reached the moon's edge, the sky lit up with green. The enemy came fast, hundreds of zeros flying in waves. It looked like a silver sea, ready to crash and destroy everything in its path. The human fleet stood between them and the Vega base. All fighters hold formation. Mira ordered Dot as the first wave of zeros hit. Chaos followed. Fighters weaved, lasers flashed, and ships exploded. But the Hellcats didn't break. Rio led a group of 5 into the front line. A group of 8 zeros rushed at them. Steady. Rio said, wait for the right moment. As the zeros came close, Rio shouted, now. All 5 Hellcats fired together. 3 zeros exploded instantly. One hit Rio's wing but bounced off the armor. He turned and fired back. Another down dot above the battle. Mira saw a group of zeros trying to flank from the right. Juno, take 2 and stop them. On it. Juno and 2 others rolled through enemy fire and hit the side group hard. Plasma bursts cut through their formation. The zeros panicked and scattered, but the enemy kept coming. For every zero destroyed, 2 more arrived. This is endless. Torin shouted. No, Myra replied. We just haven't broken them yet. Then, Rio had an idea. He remembered the grave belt, the wrecks, the traps, the tight flying space. Commander, Rio called. We can't fight them all in open sky. But we can lead them. Where? Mira asked. To the crater wall. Near Vega base. There's broken rock and low gravity there. It's like flying through a canyon. Myra understood at once. Good thinking. All Hellcats, follow Rio. The Hellcats broke from the main fight and flew low over the moon's surface. As expected, dozens of zeros chased them. Rio led the group into a deep crater filled with jagged rocks and sharp turns. It was tight flying, but it slowed the zeros down. Use the rocks for cover. Mira shouted Dot inside the crater. The Hellcats turned the battle. Zeros hit walls. Some crashed into each other. The tight space made their speed useless. Rio flew low, just above a sharp ridge, and blasted a zero trying to follow. Got another. Behind him, Torin and Kale destroyed 3 more. Juno's voice came over the cum, laughing. They can't handle the pressure. Meanwhile, on the surface, ground cannons from Vega joined the fight. Massive red beams fired upward, hitting larger enemy ships dot in the sky above. Human fighters were still fighting. Inspired by the Hellcat strategy, other squadrons began pulling zeros into tricky terrain or near asteroid rings. The enemy started to fall apart. After 2 long hours of battle, the Zanari fleet began to retreat. They're running. Naren called. Rio checked his radar. Only a few dozen zeros remained. Over 400 had been destroyed. All 7 Hellcats from Beacon 9 had survived. The sky over the moon was quiet again. Back at the Vega base, pilots landed to loud cheers. Engineers rushed to check the ships, but all the Hellcats stood strong. Rio stepped out of his cockpit, covered in sweat, but smiling. A group of young cadets stood nearby, pointing at his fighter. One whispered, "That's the one. That's the Hellcat." Mira walked over and placed a hand on Rio's shoulder. "You just helped save Earth," she said. "No," Rio replied. "We all did." Later, at the command center, Darrow stood with a small screen in his hands. The final data report was complete. Human fighters lost. 31 Zanari Zeros destroyed. 495. Hellcats lost. 0. The final kill ratio for the Hellcat X fleet was now 19-1. The number was more than math. It was proof. The stars around Beacon 9 flickered like quiet fires, but everyone inside the station was wide awake. Alarms had been going off for hours. Zanari. Scouts were gathering in nearby sectors. Spy drones had picked up movement, many Zeros flying together. Near the Serpent Corridor, a twisted path between drifting asteroids. "They're up to something," Mira said, standing in front of the war map. Rio, Torin, Juno, and the other pilots stood around her. "They know Beacon 9 is dangerous now." Mira continued. "So they want to destroy us before we grow stronger." Rio studied the map. "They're massing near the corridor?" "Yes," Mira said. "They think we'll panic and run," Brennick spoke up. "So what do we do?" Mira gave a small smile. "We don't run. We pull them in and trap them." Beacon 9 didn't have many fighters. Only 7 Hellcat X ships were ready. But the station had one advantage: terrain. The Serpent Corridor was a natural trap. It was full of narrow turns, asteroid clouds, and drifting ship bones. Fast ships like the Zeros would struggle inside. But the Hellcats, with their thick armor and strong engines, could take hits and push through. "Darrow," Mira said, turning to the Zanari defector, "can they be baited?" "Yes," Darrow replied. "Zeros hunt in groups. If they think your ships are weak or fleeing, they will follow." "Perfect," Mira said. "We'll send a small patrol into the corridor. Then fake a retreat. Once they chase us in, the rest. We'll close the trap." Rio looked at her. "And who will be the bait?" Mira smiled. "Us." The next day, just before sunset on Titan Prime, the 7 Hellcats launched into the black. The plan was simple: draw the enemy, lead them into the corridor, and hit them from both sides. Rio flew in the lead, with Mira and Torin beside him. Juno, Brennick, and 2 fresh pilots, Kale and Naren, flew behind. Within minutes, the radar lit up. "Multiple targets," Torin called out. "They've spotted us." Rio squinted at the scanner. "More than 20. "That's fine," Mira said calmly. "Let them follow." The Hellcats turned slowly and pretended to run as expected. The Zeros bit the bait. 24 silver fighters sped toward them, spreading like a sharp net. The Hellcats entered the Serpent Corridor. Space around them was filled with old station pieces, asteroid chunks, and sharp turns. Rio kept his ship steady. "Stick close. Don't go too deep," Mira said. The Zeros followed in full speed, their green weapons ready. That's when the trap closed. From behind the asteroid cloud, 3 more Hellcats rose. Kale, Naren, and Juno hit the chasing Zeros with plasma bursts from the rear. "Hit confirmed," Kale shouted. Rio and Torin turned sharply and fired at the middle of the group. Zeros tried to dodge, but the space was too tight. One clipped a rock and exploded. Another was caught between 2 beams and couldn't escape the blast. 4 down in seconds. Inside the corridor, the battle became wild. Lasers flew everywhere. Explosions shook the rocks. Zeros zipped in every direction, but they had no room to move freely. Rio chased one between 2 massive metal beams. The enemy turned fast but hit the wall. Rio fired just before the crash. Boom! Nearby, Mira and Torin fought side by side, using steady shots and shield rebounds. 2 Zeros tried to flank them, but they worked like one team. One slowed, the other fired. Clean kill. On the other end of the corridor, Juno locked onto 3 Zeros. She fired a short EMP pulse, disabling one, then finished the other two with a tight plasma spread. "Corridor is burning." She laughed. They didn't see this coming. But the fight wasn't over. The Zanari sent reinforcements. 6 more Zeros entered from the top end of the field. "We're still outnumbered." Naren warned. "We're Hellcats," Mira said. "Outnumbered doesn't mean outmatched. Stay sharp." The enemy began using risky moves, flying faster, firing harder. Rio saw 1 Zero charging straight toward him, ignoring its safety. He boosted backward, fired once, and the Zero exploded too close. His shields flickered. "I'm hit, but still." "Flying," Rio said. Myra's voice was calm. "Good. Now give them something to fear." The battle raged for another 15 minutes. One by one, the Zeros fell. Some crashed into debris. Others were destroyed by precise Hellcat fire. The last Zero tried to flee. Rio saw it on radar, running toward open space. "I've got it." He pushed his engines and chased the silver fighter past the edge of the corridor. He aimed, waited for the perfect moment, and fired. The shot hit the enemy's core. Final kill. When the Hellcats returned to Beacon 9, the hangar crew clapped and cheered. Out of 24 Zeros, 23 were destroyed. 1 escaped with damage. All Hellcat X fighters returned home, though some were scratched and smoking dot inside the briefing room. Darrow reviewed the report. "Kill ratio, 23-0, he said quietly. "They will feel this." Mira looked at Rio. This was the moment. "What moment?" "The moment the Zanari stopped hunting us and started fearing us." That evening, as stars blinked above the station, Rio stood near his ship. Its body was scarred, but its engine still hummed strong. He placed his hand on its side. "You fought like a beast today," he whispered. "You showed your claws." From behind, Mira walked up. "We've changed the war," she said. Rio nodded. "But it's not over yet." "No," Mira agreed. "But soon, the whole galaxy will know one thing." She pointed to the name painted on the fighter's side. F6F. Hellcat X, the ship that broke the fear.